Is Spelljammer really worth the $70, or should you save your money and wait for the next adventure setting? Howdy guys, and welcome to another episode from the Foundry, where I give monkey brain advice to DMs and players alike, along with tips and how-to guides using my campaign as an example. As a quick disclaimer, I have neither played nor read the original Spelljammer in 2nd edition, so there is no nostalgia factor or rose-tinted glasses clouding this review. This review will be broken up into a few parts, which you can find timestamps for in the description down below. And while you're down there, how about I tune into the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future reviews like Journey to the Radiant Citadel or Dragonlance once that comes out. I'll be breaking down this review into the following parts: the good, the bad, and the unforgivable, followed by my final judgment on this matter. First, let's start with one of my favorite parts about this book set. It's a book set. Now, I understand that some people don't like that this one book was broken up into 3 little ones, but personally, I really like it. A, it fills up more of my empty bookshelf. B, I think it's very useful when you're reading through the campaign setting that you can easily reference Boo's Menagerie of Monsters at the same time. B and a half, if you want to show the parties what one of the monsters looks like, you can easily do that. And finally, C, you can just straight up give your party one of the books so they can easily reference either the feats, the new backgrounds, or even the racial traits without having to worry about oversharing any other information. I think splitting the book up like this is a really good move, and I hope to see this happen more often moving forward with future book settings. Now, along with the book set format, I absolutely love the artwork. It is beautiful. I really just can't praise it enough. I'm also excited that Wizards of the Coast has finally given us what we've always truly wanted in D&D: fishing mechanics. No longer do our parties need to suffer eating nothing but rations that they carry around with them day in and day out. Now, they can fish up their food and have something fresh. I think the new races introduced in this sourcebook were also really fun and interesting and fairly well balanced, though they are a little tuned for Astral campaigns specifically, but they can fit in any campaign. The Spelljammer ships are a lot of fun. You get like 16 different options there, and Boo's Menagerie also introduces 40 new, cool, and kind of horrifying monsters, especially for early to mid-tier levels. In the campaign setting, Light of Xaryxis, there were some very memorable characters in there, like Prince Zeleth, or Flapjack even. And lastly, I can really appreciate how Wizards of the Coast is slowly introducing the new way they want to approach feats with backgrounds. Plus, from what I've heard in the rumor mill, it sounds like this is what 1D&D is going to be like for character creation. And I kind of like it. Now, moving on with my nitpicks, we'll start with the Astral Adventurer's Guide. I find it really disappointing that it hints at these amazing campaigns and stories you can tell, but with no explanation on how to do this. There's just a lot of fluff and promise of cowboy bebop type adventures, but nothing really there to help support that. Like I mentioned in what was good about this book set, I do find that the new races and backgrounds are really tuned specifically for an Astral campaign, where they can work in a normal campaign setting on the prime material plane. They feel a little bit off, as they all seem to yearn to go back into the Astral Sea. On that note, this book doesn't really define what it means to have a space campaign, or how they like to call it, the Astral Sea or the Wild Space. The way this setting sets it up, there is no space as we know it in the real world because there is no clear definition. It isn't an empty void, and there's no clear distinction on how much travel or distance there is between Astral Sea, Wild Space, or location. It's all just arbitrary and kind of waved away. It goes on to needlessly over-explain in the most long-winded fashion that it can on how breathing and gravity works in this setting. Kind of like this complaint about it. They simply could have just said, you have just enough oxygen to not die immediately if caught out in wild space, but not enough to really do anything or be able to make it anywhere to survive anyways. So just get a spacesuit or a caster to help with this. Gravity is the same thing. There either is gravity or there isn't. Large objects will have it unless the DM says it doesn't, because reasons. Space combat essentially boils down to ram them and board them, because anything else kind of just doesn't make sense. You're better off just attacking them normally, which kind of takes a little bit of the space adventure out of it. Plus, distance is so arbitrary and just waved away by the DM, so it doesn't really make sense to do anything else anyways. They also gave us some repairing mechanics, which would be useful if they didn't immediately turn around and just say, use the mending cantrip. It's better, easier, and faster and cheaper. You're gonna need a caster anyways, because that's the only way you can fly a Spelljammer to begin with. guidance on creating your own planet or wild space system is almost non-existent. They essentially just tell you, look at our one example and copy it. Otherwise, good luck. Are you starting to see the pattern here? Now, I don't need my handheld completely in every aspect of D&D, but at least give me something, a checklist or a table that I can reference. That way, I can use these tools to make my own planet, my own wild space system, or even ships. Instead, the tables we do get are fairly lackluster. When it comes to the Light of Xaryxis campaign, I'm left a little bit confused. The Rock of Brawl and even the story hooks provided are all so dry and bare bone. I find it really hard to use these to compel my party to feel engaged or even care about the quest as a whole. The scenarios or chapters also feel just bad and gross to me. I personally find the constant cliffhangers at the end of each one of these chapters just it's so bad and feels lazy to me. And on top of that, the story just constantly feels like the party's jumping encounter to encounter, just grinding their way through until they finally reach the final chapter. This just feels tedious and annoying, frustrating even for me, let alone for my players. And now let's get into the unforgivable or even downright sinful acts that this book set does. I cannot and will not forgive that even more rogue features are being stolen out by races just so they can be good. This is borderline blasphemous to try to dissuade the players from playing the greatest class in all of D&D. Rogues. All half jokes aside, I really just can't stand these next two parts. I hate that we have high CR monsters that just feel like giant hit point sponges and attack the party with these wet noodle attacks. Like, what is that? What's the point of having these large, intimidating creatures that we describe as an absolute menace to our party if they just kind of flop about weakly and limply? I thought we fixed this in Monsters of the Multiverse. Why are we moving backwards? My players love winning encounters, but they also love to overcome the challenges I put in front of them. And some of these creatures just don't do that. The power creep with every new additional sourcebook is very real, and they need to stay somewhat consistent with that if they want to make these new books even worth purchasing. Otherwise, why would you spend more money to have new creatures or new races that are weaker than what's currently available? And lastly, I hate futile tasks, doing things just to do them. I value my time as a DM and a person along with my players' time, and this setting just spits in our face. Light of Xaryxis has some solid ideas and things that we can pick apart and drop into our own space campaigns, but it definitely has some major problems with it. That being the ending. It's absolutely trash. Garbage, insulting, borderline disrespectful. What is the point of spending session after session working with our players where they're doing everything right just for it to mean nothing? They struggle to come up with new plans and ideas to gain allies, overcome all these weird situations, and pass every single check no matter how high we make the DC, and they're not rewarded for any of that effort. And that's so I hate it. I hate it for my players, and I hate doing that to them. Because, spoiler alerts, at the end, no matter how hard the party struggles to make allies along the way, they all just surrender at the end. They don't do anything. Now, I know as DMs, we get the final say in how things go, and we can go off script. And I understand that having that many allies can be chaotic to keep track of, but like, come on. What's the point of giving our players that option to even have allies if we're just gonna strip it away from them at the end? They got these allies so they can steamroll this final encounter, not just to have a normal encounter and all their friends sitting on the ground next to them going, "You can do it!" The whole plot feels like it's more geared towards a higher level parties reaching the end of tier 3 play or going into tier 4 play, not level 5 heroes who by the end of this barely managed to make it to level 8. The scale of this problem is just way too big and left me wondering why everyone is relying on their local neighborhood hero instead of the Avengers pretty much. And the cherry on top, it doesn't matter what they do. Even if they succeed, nothing matters. All they do is push the problem off for another party, kicking the can down the road. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Nothing's fixed, it's just delayed. If this was Dark Souls or even Ravenloft, I would be okay with that. It would make tonal sense. But this isn't that. This is supposed to be wacky fun adventures, very pulpy. We have vampirates, space clowns, and pretty much space cowboys everywhere. What kind of ending is this? It just feels like a slap in the face to tell your party, hey, good job, the problem's still there. Congrats. I think this setting really set itself up for success and had two major factors going into that. One of them being it was riding off the curtails of the second edition version, so veteran players of the game would be excited about it, running down nostalgia lane. And for new DMs like myself, it's very enticing, the idea of having space D&D. But it just kind of failed to deliver on a lot of these promises and a lot of this hype that it built up. I think as a base concept, it's really titillating and inspiring. And I really appreciate that a good portion of Light of Xaryxis focuses on what happens if the party fails at any part along the adventure. Because so often our party feels like if they fail any part of an adventure, the whole adventure is done. And this gives us a good example to kind of go, hey, no, other things can happen. The adventure still can go on. It just now takes a different route. So if you take that, coupled with the new monsters, magic items, races, approach to how backgrounds and feats work, and 3-book split, then I say get it. I thought it was worth it. Wizards of the Coast made some bold decisions around certain aspects of the game, which I personally really like and want to see more of. Now, obviously, this doesn't excuse all the flaws in this book set, since for new DMs, it really just leaves a lot to be desired, giving them almost no guidance whatsoever on creating their own planet, wild space system, or space adventure. From what I learned through further research, it seems like the second edition version of Spelljammer provided DMs with a lot more tools to create their own campaigns, helping them ensure that they didn't forget major parts of making a planet or their solar system. Because of that, I think it really sucks that the 5th edition refresh as a setting book, it fails, really. As an introduction to some of the new ideas and concepts that Wizards of the Coast is trying to push and move towards, I think it did really well. Passable even. In future sourcebooks, I would love to see more support for the DMs, along with maybe some suggestions on how we can use and apply the new ideas to older content. This brings us to the end of this review on the Spelljammer book set. If you found this video helpful and enjoyable, comment down below your opinions on this book set, and if you're familiar with the second edition version, let me know how it compares. The next sourcebook I'll be reviewing is Journey Through the Radiant Citadel. If you like my honest and totally objective reviews on these books and would like to see more in the future, consider supporting me on my Patreon, which you can find a link to in my description down below. In the meantime, check out my DM tips and advice playlist where I cover other aspects of Dungeons & Dragons and my take on how to fix them. But yeah, see you guys next time.